Hi, and thank you for being here. It's me again, Drea. Yeah. This is the Kymatica episode of the Exit the Matrix series. Now, if you're new to this, the preface of this series has to do with helping you evolve your consciousness by connecting dots in what is the current social structure that is set up. My position on things is usually neither here nor there because it's all the same thing at the core, but it's important to be able to observe all aspects and as many perspectives as possible. The idea with being a well-rounded, universal, critical thinker in this upcoming next stage of existence is going to be really, really key for those who seek it. For those who don't seek it, it's fine. They're going to fall right in line and do what's like normal to do in a conformist mentality. And for those of us who are on this other divine path, there's other things to do. As usual, this is a story that continues to go on and on. It's the never-ending story, if you will. We'll get a little bit further into that across this series, but I want to kind of give you an outline of thank you for being here. That's what the series is about. If you're new to this, I encourage you to listen to the other series if any of the subject matter interests you. And let's get into it. All that we perceive with five senses is made up of two fundamental principles: vibration and matter, yang and yin, expansive force, recessive force. Everything that you see in the world, everything that we experience with these senses is made up of that. Those two fundamental forces are what we consider Kymatica, right? Some people would call it a duality belief system or a duality awareness understanding. The process by which this documentary breaks things down is so vast and so expansive and so connective, it helps lay over various categories or different sections of society that we have kind of divvied out, if you will. And they're all correlating with one another. They're all cogs in the very big matrix that is the thing that we're operating in. It's a collective agreed upon dream. This documentary gives one of the best outlines for what's happening spiritually, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, physically, socially. This documentary gives a full layout to that. So it was why it kind of became the runner-up to the second piece. I wanted to express the corporation in a very real way, or like get people to kind of jump on board so you could see how deep we were going to start just getting right off the bat. That way, when you get to this documentary, we can lay out all of these different layers of reality. Then what I'm going to do in my next segment will kind of help you understand where I was going mentally with cross-examining the two of them together. And everything from here on out in the series gets way easier because these are the two pieces you really need to start the exit process, to start really deciding, okay, what's my strategy? If that makes sense. Okay, so the reason why I stuck these two movies like back to back, the way I was taking both of these documentaries and saying, okay, we're going to do The Corporation first and Kymatica second, is because first and foremost, Kymatica is really deep. Kymatica is probably one of the deepest documentaries I think is out there, which is why on the last episode I put a preface, like, don't go watch it if you're super religious, because it unhinges a lot of things and it can really shake people up who are not ready for reality change. Is it worth it? Absolutely. But I think that it's important to have I think it's important to have the proper support system in your world when you're going to dive into deeper concepts, because you need to be able to balance ideas off of people. I think getting too far down the rabbit hole of reality without proper support can be actually really scary, because it's not a game in the sense that it's very interactive. I've said this about this a lot, is that the universe and the world is interactive to your thoughts, your feelings, the words that you say. And as you become more heightened and more aware of that, there is no escaping knowing the synchronicities for what it is and being required to take responsibility for where you stand in that position. So these two movies are not for the faint of heart, like at all. But the main reason I put them next to each other was because the corporation outlines how we've allowed corporations to become a certain type of unethical, unmoral person for what we call a person in the world. And we have held it accountable to continuing to reproduce immoral and unethical behaviors in order to maintain its personhood. And when you get into Kymatica, what happens is humans were tricked into believing they are corporations. So you have what is this personhood that we're giving corporations, the exact same shit is applying to humans. And it's not exact to the sense that we lose our personhood if we don't go out and produce necessarily, because what we're being held to is a different type of law for the different, what we would be considered as a corporate fiction. Straw man, that's the all caps listed on your paperwork, the birth certificate, the social security, everything that this documentary kind of broke down. What they were breaking down is that I, the living in flesh, live animated being that is sentient, that is God-given, that is granted inalienable rights as a living sentient being of God, is not a corporate fiction. But if I walk around identifying with my given name, which has been hijacked to fulfill a quota, a quota to meet a repayment on a loan, in a nutshell, right? These are all actual facts about how the system is laid out for what we're here to do. And when you play ball, what it looks like. When you don't play ball, what it looks like. So recognizing yourself as a natural person and being able to operate in arenas where it matters as a natural person, and being able to understand where your corporate fiction is going to operate as well also matters. So I put them next to each other because of this. One is a sinister trick to trick people into identifying as a corporation. And then the other one is to get people not even thinking about how a corporation has the same level of intangible, inalienable rights, but there's not a living, sentient, there's not a heartbeat to a corporation, but we're giving it a lot of the same properties and values. To me, putting those two next to one another is huge. And I don't think most people are going to pick up on that I went one way with the law over here and another way with the law over here, and how self-identification is super important, and so is awareness to the environment that you have been submerged into without knowing you were submerged into it. That is what exiting the Matrix is all about. I like to crack jokes, like it's like, you know, some fucking spaceship's gonna show up and just pick your ass up, and here you go, you're gonna be taken to the new space. But truthfully, the new space is created in a collective where the pocket of existence doesn't have to identify with this. And that's a tricky thing to break down. I can't even really go too much further into it, because I think trying to explain to people how collective reality works is a much bigger fish to fry, and we don't got time for all that on this one. So I'll leave that where that is, but I wanted to kind of break down, here's why I put the corporation next to Kymatica. Here's a big key piece of insight when it comes to law, language, and identification that becomes super, super, super paramount to understand. I hope paramount is even the right word. Right. Wow. I don't agree with everything in this documentary. I think it's important to say that. I'm not going to harp too hard on the things I don't agree with because I think the outline is brilliant and pretty seamless, to be real, about all the things they put into this. It's a lot of information. I would say that the thing that I particularly don't agree with in the documentary is how certain ancient cultures were projected. But every single documentary, everything you find is going to project them this way. It's actually very hard to find a counterposition that's something deeper, and that doesn't surprise me. So I do perceive and am aware that all religions do come from ancient, what air quotes, Egypt. It's not really the name of that culture, is my point. All walks of life, all forms of knowledge come from this information in this culture. And you can probably stand back and think of a handful of reasons why Europeans would not want people to know that. So that's where I don't agree with this documentary, like with the information projected. But they are doing what every other documentary would do, because this is the only information that's available to us, unless you actually have rare books and rare information that you have read or come across or have been privy to that gives you a different insight on what was going on in air quotes ancient Egypt. So that's the only thing that I could stand back and go, okay, well, no, they can't really unpack that much further because they don't know that much about it. So that's one of those things that I'm not offended by, but I think people should research more. I'm always encouraging people to, like, whatever piece of it didn't sit well with you, research it, look into it. There might be a reason you need to know more about it, or you need to get a different perspective. I think all in all, it's important to have a well-rounded perspective about the things that you're learning and the things that you're engaging in, and the big picture of what the collective reality is, what reality has been kind of mapped around in the Matrix. And then the next documentary that I'll plug at the end of this episode, we'll get a little bit deeper into the next layer. Long and short is, that's the only thing I could think of that I was like, that stands on ground that I'm just so familiar with in regular textbooks that it's lame. But I can appreciate that for the first time, there's a space where we're actually saying, hey, everything originated out of this space. And that actually has been done, but not, I don't think, to the kind of scale that this really gave credit to, that all forms of knowledge and information actually stem from this space of the world. All right, I'm going to leave that there. One of the first and most important things to notate about watching any sort of documentary, any sort of film where it's educational, is that there is something that the person who made the film is trying to get you to believe in by the end of it. And I think that's really important, is to recognize that each time you watch somebody's body of work, they're trying to get you to go with them wherever their thought process is on this information that they're presenting. The thing I love about this particular documentary is that at the very end of it, what it really comes down to is pointing people back to themselves. A lot of documentaries want to move you into a process of, like, here's the solutions, here's all the things we think could be successful. And Kymatica really pulls you back into self at the very core of it. It pulls you back into, my responsibility in this world is collectively on an individual basis. And if I start there, I'm going to manifest into the right collective, because each individual is having that vibratory specific experience to the earth plane that we're all in, right? So the thing I love about Kymatica is that it's pointing you into self-reflection, it's pointing you into self-awareness, and it's pointing you into the ultimate shift up here starts with self. It starts with what you do internally, what kind of decisions you make on a regular basis with your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And I harp on this shit all the time. So revisiting this documentary has been super, super cool to my growth. Kind of actualized a lot of things that have been discussed, and then realized a handful of things that I forgot, that I'm like, that's where we go next. That's what we work on next. So I hope that you enjoyed this documentary as much as I do. And I would encourage you to watch it a bunch of times, because you're always going to pull new information out of it. you have made it to the end of the episode. Pat yourself on the back again. Next week's homework is going to take us one level deeper. So if the corporation was the most superficial level, Kymatica was the good meat and potatoes in the middle, and this one's going to take us to the next level lower. This documentary came out in the early 2000s, so a lot of the graphics and stuff are super cheesy, but realistically, this documentary is so good. Like, so good. So I would encourage you to check this one out. It's also on YouTube. The documentary is titled, What the Bleep Do We Know? And you use the word bleep, for real. It is a documentary about quantum physics. It's actually not as hard to digest as you would think. There's a lot of really cool visuals and I think a pretty good plot line to help address a lot of the concepts that are being put into place. I love the lady who's like one of the main actresses in it. And I would just encourage you to check this documentary out too, but that's the homework for next week. So if you show up next week and you didn't watch it, you're just going to get some weird abridged version by me, but truthfully, it's going to be some good stuff. If you've been following along this far, it's going to be the next kind of good key piece to help you with the next level of this process. Anyway, so What the Bleep Do We Know? You can find it on YouTube. I want to thank you for following along with this series. And there is a Facebook group that I'm a part of. It's called Exit the Matrix. There's like 1 million of them. I would encourage you to join groups like that. If you need support in this situation or you have any questions that you feel like I haven't addressed, find me on social media and send me messages. And other than that, thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your whatever the time frame is that you're listening to this. Peace.